Good morning, everyone. Welcome. This is Angela Coulter and
Sarah Sieg Avignoni.
this week's Living Ascension. So, yeah, we had a nice week off. Well, I had a nice week off.
I had a nice week off.
Good. And it was, of course, there's always a message in everything. So, every mishap and whatever that happened, it was, it's interesting. We have so much going on. And I know we've said this so many times, but things are just amping up like.
Right. Well, and the fact that you called what happened a mishap.
Yeah.
But they're all just haps.
Right. They are all just haps. Things that did not seem to be in the flow, but caused the flow to just change direction. And that's all part of the thing. Cause we get into this place and that's, we get into this righteousness, right? And you and I have had these conversations about righteousness, spiritual righteousness of, and it can be, and it's a judgment of, oh, well, this is a mishap. Oh, this is unaligned. This is wrong. This is not the way it's supposed to be. Right. And, conversations I have all the time with people that are like, well, we're supposed to be, like evolving and this is all happening and preventing that. And it's like all this judgment. It's like, but what if it's what we need to do what we came here to do? Because that's really what it is, or else it wouldn't be here in our reality.
Right. Well, and the way I look at it is that there's that the universe has this plan, and that means that we have this plan that we've agreed to participate in, and that it creates, I think of it like a flow chart. Because I don't want to say hierarchy, but it's like some things have to happen. How they happen might be rearrangeable and changeable and have some flexibility in them. But for the most part, certain things have to happen in order for the next thing to happen and the next thing to happen, or concentric, not necessarily linear. Mm-hmm. And we get confused in thinking that when we can influence the smaller things, that we have charge of the whole thing.
Which we do, but at the charge of the whole thing is at this level that we don't yet remember. So then
exactly.
And so it's this whole judgment. Yeah. Because we think that's wrong, right? This is wrong. This shouldn't be happening. This was a mistake. And it's like, we're not, right?
Right. Well, and I started, since we talked about this is what our topic was going to be, and I've been looking at it and seeing how it shows up in my day to day, and where I get triggered and what I have left to negotiate around, and in this whole subject, and I was looking at the past and the future, and that is the ego's territory. Mm-hmm. And being present in the moment almost like takes the ego out of the equation, from the perspective of, I don't care what's happened in the past and I'm not worried about the future. So what's here right now for me?
Right. Right. And that causes a lot more clarity, because you know what?
It really does. And the emotion just kind of goes to nothing.
Yeah. Because
it's like, oh, the brain kicks in and goes, you've given me something to think about.
Well, we've given ourselves, this is the interesting thing. We've given ourselves so many opportunities at a collective level to do this in the past several years, right? To really sit in presence. And we've talked about presence and 5 million different versions and all that kind of stuff. And so what's happened is everybody first was, I just want things to go back to the way they were. Right. Which was already broken. Well, or breaking to crumble. Right. And it's like,
it was so broken, we couldn't even recognize it anymore.
Do you want to take all those crumbs from the cookie that are sitting all around on the table and glue them back into the cookie? It's just sort of
right.
Like, wow, what kind of and so then it was like, okay, then as time went on, many had gotten to this place of, okay, let's just deal with what we have in front of us, which then brings us to more presence, right?
Right.
Which is really the goal, right? And like you're saying, because it does take the ego, starts to get us in the practice of taking the ego out of the conversation, or just out of managing the whole conversation, right? And then we got there to a certain point, and then we're pushing ourselves. We've been pushing ourselves further, but then we opened everything up because it's like, well, we've got to have access to do all these things in the 3D to accomplish this whole thing. And then the big landslide of people trying to fall back into, oh, well, I was secretly wishing we would just go back to the way things were. So now the way things were, I'm going to go back to what I was doing instead of doing what I've been doing that's better for me, or in a place that serves me now.
Right.
And that's breaking everything. It's breaking everything down even faster than ever before. I got into the whole, like, stuck in that whole travel mess this past weekend coming home, that apparently there were thousands of flights canceled across the country and everything else. And it has to do with this whole ripple effect, this whole domino effect of stuff that's going on with, not having enough pilots, and not companies not wanting to pay for their people, and instead they just want to get the dividends at the stockholder levels and all that kind of stuff. And like, there's so many things, and I don't want to make this a whole, economics discussion, but it's a domino effect. It's a domino effect of things that are crumbling because they don't serve us, because they became so out of proportion to the balance of everything.
Right.
And we've gotten so complacent into, like, wanting to create comfort zones that are these bubbles of ignorance around the whole, right? And then in that we deny our own wholeness. And so now things are just crumbling, right? So all I kept on getting was just be here.
Right.
And it was really funny because I was irritated. Yeah. Because I wanted to get home. I was tired. It was a full week, scuba diving takes a lot out of you energetically, physically. And I'm like, I just wanted to go home, sleep in my own bed. And it was, and then, you get irritated, frustrated, but then it was like, okay, I got over that. Right. 3 hours online in the airport, waiting to get to rebook our tickets. 3 hours, and we were in the middle of the line, like, I don't know, a couple thousand people in Miami airport getting stuck. And wasn't because of the 20 minutes of thunderstorms. It was because all the pilots timing out and them not having any backups to pilot the planes.
Right.
And so,
but that points to just a whole nother level of, well, but we want to be safe.
Right.
And so we put these other rules in place that allow that to time out, but yet we still want to be safe.
Yeah.
So
safe. The ego is, so at some point I was just like, okay, it is what it is. The reality is that we're probably just going to get stuck on the flight they automatically rebooked us on. And is there anything else we can get from this? Like, can we get some food vouchers or a hotel or something, which they don't do anymore? Funny. They used to do that for people all the time. But then it was like, okay, so what do? We sleep here at the airport. That's what we're going to do. Because at 2 o'clock in the morning, that's really the only option we had.
Right.
But the funny thing was, we're standing in line, and at some point I was just like, okay, well, we're just here. Right. So instead of getting irritated, we started playing game. Like, we were just joking around. I was practicing my Kung Fu. And then I was like, and then we started talking about, the buggies, the electric buggies they go through the airport with him. There were like a bunch of them parked on the side of the airport there. And I go, so wouldn't it be fun to, then we're like, oh, wouldn't it be fun if we went on like a rampage and stole the electric vehicles and started playing Mario Kart? Like, so we just started like, doing these funny situations and whatever. And laughing, right? And then the people around us start laughing, right? And we're tired. We're all tired. We're all there. There's no place we can go, really, except wait online to get, do what we can do. And it was funny because when I got to the very front of the line, there was a woman, because like the end of the line in zigzag, there was a woman that was probably like 5 people behind us. And so we crossed over in the zigzag, and she looks at me and she goes, do I know you? And I said, I don't, yeah. I said, you look a little familiar. She's like, well, do you live in Raleigh? And I said, yeah. And she's like, because we were one of a dozen flights or more at that point, so it wasn't just the Raleigh people. And I said, yeah. And she starts asking me, well, do you live here? Do you go here? Do you work here? And none of them. I was like, no. And I was like thinking, well, there's social media, but I didn't say anything. And I was just like, and she goes, well, you're really familiar. She goes, and there's something about you that makes me feel comforted that there's a friendly face here. And I thought, well, that was really nice, even though I'm exhausted and tired and doing my best to not be irritated, because at some point it was just like letting go of what those original expectations were and being just there. Right.
Right.
And
Well,
so,
and when you get lost in that irritation and you get lost in those judgments of this shouldn't be happening or this is wrong, or you miss participating in the expanded purpose of that whole cycle, and you run the risk, you gamble that you're going to have to do it again if you're not participatory.
right. Good morning, Gloria. Yes. And so we have a lot of craziness, what things feel like craziness. And there are going to be more and more people in collective groups. Like I was the part of several thousand people, right? That got stuck in one airport. And there were more than that across the country because of other things that were playing out at a collective level. And we have volunteered to be a part of. The dog agrees.
Well, he insists on sitting behind me. And I think the chair just got a little too close to him.
But, and the thing is, and I had several instances last week of having to be so present and where I was that I couldn't think of anything else but just be present and just deal with what I was dealing with and getting through every moment. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's we always think of that as an emergency situation only. Right. But if we push ourselves, if the only time we're ever in a present situation is when we have an emergency situation, then we're going to continue to push ourselves to have emergency situations over and over again until we learn the lesson of how to be present and right now. Right.
Well, and it's incredible the sense of freedom you get when we've talked about that before with your precious things and things that you've drawn the line and say, I'll only go this far. I can't let go of this. I can't let go of this. And once you are forced and choose to cross that line, the freedom and the sense of relief and the sense of, oh, wow, I was living in this tiny little shoebox. And now look at this. Look at all the options that are now open to me.
Right. And I see that time and time again. We have multiple connections and friends that have gone through divorces and have had long-term marriages that they left, and it was a big crumbling, and they're just picking up the pieces and creating amazing, powerful new lives for themselves. And that because they left, and they went through the grief and then the regret and everything else, but that was a normal process. And now they're just standing on their own. And it's amazing to see that empowerment.
Well, and the opposite of that, could also be is they choose to stay and they choose to work it out and they choose to, I don't want to say fight the good fight, but they choose to honor each other in their journeys and still continue together. And that that still is an evolution in and of itself.
It is the biggest thing. That's the challenge. It's almost more of a challenge to stay in relationships these days because of the fact that we have so many tendencies for that dependency of creating our value due to the relationship, right? And if it's a challenging thing to get through a place of, I don't have value because I'm in this relationship. I'm in this relationship because I choose to be, and I have value on my own, and I can be with it or without it, and that's fine. So that's a big transformation in itself.
Right.
To truly get there, and not just say we're getting there, but to say, yeah, no, I can walk away from this relationship any day. I just choose to be here because I'm happy in this place. This is where my guidance is to be, and I have no attachment to it. That's a very different attachment to a relationship. And then to say, okay, but just as easily, oh, today's the day, it's time for us to take separate paths, and there's no right or wrong. There's no judgment about that.
Right. Because that can happen whether you're having conflict in your relationship or not. Someone could be involved in a tragic accident and they're gone.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just divorce that would end a relationship. If you always live, always live as if this is it. This is your last day on earth, your last minute on earth, your last hour on earth. Everything's different. You approach everything different. And to me, that's where we've pushed ourselves, because we can't live in the present moment,
mm-hmm.
is to focus on what's here for me right here in this moment.
Right. But, one of the biggest challenges, I think, for everyone is getting beyond. There's so many, can't get the words. We are so embedded in external valuation that we make so many choices that are fairly unconscious, having to do with, I'm going to do this because this will make him or her happy, and that'll make me happy because they're happy, because then when they're happy with me, then I'm valuable as a person. And if they're not happy with me, I'm not valuable as a person. Or if I'm here to support them all the time, regardless of not supporting myself, then they are not necessarily, then I'm a martyr. I'm worth more because I sacrifice. We believe all this stuff and then we do it. And so then what happens is, collectively, we've gotten to a place where we brainwash ourselves and each other with, oh, well, you're not being a part of the collective. Like, look at what we went through with the mask things, right? Or vaccination or whatever, right? With the COVID. And it was like all this like brainwashing on both sides, right? And it's all based on, well, it's pulling at these strings of, don't you want to be a part of this group? Do you want to be a part of this group? Or do you want to be a part of this group? Do you want to be part of us, or do you want to be part of them? And that's still separation. It's still divisive, and it perpetuates that lack of wholeness.
Right.
So,
it's so much that division to where it's all to make yourself feel better for being who you are, by trying to get people on your side. And if we would just come to that place of realizing that, we're all humans, all residing on the same piece of rock orbiting around this star,
right? That's
where we need to get to.
Right.
That's the commonality we need to focus on, not, oh, well, my hair's brown, or my eyes are green, or
my skin is purple, or
right, exactly. Or I live here, or I believe this, or I drive this kind of car, or I have this kind of dog, or I don't like dogs, or
right.
It's that microscopic division, and that's where the judgment comes in and starts making those little boxes that we all have to live in, that create such discomfort. And then that's what breaks, is because it's so unnatural.
Yes. And we've gotten so focused on division versus unification that, everything is just crumbling, right? There's so many things that, and I'm not saying that to be, whatever, anarchist or alarmist or anything. It just, everything is crumbling right now. There are so many things that are crumbling because they've been built on that divisiveness, that separation, and that, you need to be a part of our group to be special or valuable or whatever. And therefore you need to sacrifice all the stuff of yourself so that you can be in this group of people, however that looks, right? You can't act this way if you're going to be this kind of person. You can't act this way if you're in this group. And it sounds like, we're pointing fingers, but it's everything. It's almost everything we do.
I mean, who would have ever thought, even 40 years ago, 30 years ago, that there would be a correlation between elementary schools or schools in general and gun control? Who would have ever made that connection?
Right. Right.
Who would have ever thought that one had anything to do with the other?
Right. So we had to
Well,
create that in our reality because that was the
we
only way.
had to get our attention.
That's right. That's right.
We had to get our attention and make it really important. And so you have to look at that. Schools don't work for the majority of children.
Yep.
It works for the government.
Yep.
Sometimes it doesn't work for the children, and they're getting to where it used to work for the majority, or they believed it did, and now they're finding that it actually doesn't. It takes an old, outdated method and forces kids into that, and then everybody has to be treated the same, and everything is just lost.
Right. Well, right. We've had an antiquated system for a long time it doesn't work with our society, with our children and everything else. And
so
yeah.
I've noticed on TV since the latest events, the homeschooling commercials are just rampant. And it's like, yeah, people are saying, okay, I need an alternative to keeping my child in harm's way because this system doesn't work anymore.
Right.
So speaking of something that's broken.
Well, yeah, I mean, we could talk for days about that.
Right. And no, I don't want to get off on that topic.
No, but it is. And so we see these things like, so yeah. And then you have the travel industry, which has been in the news continuously for months on this stuff happening on a regular basis now. Right. You have, and that's what people, what is the first thing people want to do when everything opened up? They want to travel and go places and whatever. And it's like,
and the companies want you to because they want your money.
That's right. But they don't want them enough to pay their pilots enough to support themselves.
Right.
So,
right. And, I know that there's a large percentage of pilots that aged out because you're only allowed to fly so long.
Yeah.
And then
to cut you off. Yeah.
And they're ready to go back to work, but yet they don't qualify.
Yeah. Yeah. But the companies don't want to pay the newbies out of the $70,000 flight school to be able to, support themselves in the beginning. So yeah, there's that big gap. And then they're like, well, what do we do? We don't want to have to not get a big dividend, but they're not going to because people are going to stop traveling that way.
Well, that way. Exactly.
So yeah, I mean, and there's so many things and when we do all of that, we stop thinking of the whole. Like we have gotten so, and I don't want to get into any kind of big discussion on being worshiping the dollar over everything else and all that kind of stuff, because we've created that as a mark of valuation in our reality, right? But so many things are these short-sighted choices that don't look at the whole picture, right? And don't see the long-term benefits to things. And everybody's gotten so short-sighted, which that's the thing that's crumbling. And and the thing is not for us to judge it, right? So this is the whole point of talking about this. The thing is not for us to judge it. It's what is it for here in this moment to show me that it's in my face, because essentially it will be, right? I was guided a long time ago, stop watching the news years ago, probably been 10 years since I was watching the news. And it was like, anything you need to know is going to come across your path. You will know. Right. So sometimes it comes up on social media or it comes in a conversation. Sometimes it happens in my own reality. And it's like, well, but then I get guidance as to what there is to do in my reality. Right. Be present. Deal with this right now. Deal with what's in front of you right now.
Right.
And you're right. And it takes the emotion out of it. But when we stay conscious of of this right now moment, then yeah, the emotion goes away. We stop getting into these debates over things that are really unimportant.
Right. Right.
You know, at the end of the day, when do we come together? We come together when we have a cataclysm,
Tragedy.
a tragedy. Yes.
Right.
Because then suddenly we forget about all those stupid things. Now that's a judgment, but all the things that we were debating about that we thought were so important, about whether my dog is better than your dog, or the kind of breed I have, or the kind of house I have, or the kind of car I have is better, or whether I believe in abortion or not, or whether I believe in this or not. And then like all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, we all have to live here
Right. Exactly.
while we're
Exactly.
embodied. Right.
Right. I can just see some television shows, and I'm sure there already has been, where the earth unites only when it's
Invaded by aliens. There's so many movies.
I
That's all
know.
they talk about, right?
Right. Because it's certain that it's not uniting us, that we're destroying the earth.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I saw a bunch of that while I was away this week too,
Right. Well, and there so many strides were made, so many things changed when we all stayed home. And we all, cities that it was like Los Angeles, it's like, oh, the smog will never go away. Funny, but it
6
did.
months. Yeah, 6 months.
It did. It did. And I'm sure it's all right back. But at the same time, we did that. But you go to the grocery store and it's like, you can't use your own bag.
Right.
Because of COVID. So it was like so many things were just sacrificed, where strides that we've made. And it's like, okay, we had an opportunity.
Well, and we do continue to create opportunities for ourselves, but the more we deny ourselves from embracing those opportunities, it's like I took a class while I was in Mexico on reef conservation and preservation. And one of the biggest problems people don't realize is only 0.05% of the world's reefs are actually alive anymore, right? Considering that it is the largest part of the food chain in the world, and people just don't even think about that.
Well, it just reminds me of the bees.
Yes. And the bees, you got that, right? And so one of the things that contribute the most to like a lot of the reefs that are alive, especially in the Caribbean and stuff, the cruise industry, because now they want them bigger and better. We want thousands and thousands of people or whatever. And so then they take and they change out water throughout the entire Caribbean. So if they have a disease over here in the water, guess what?
It's everywhere.
Yeah. And they're wanting more piers in each of the ports where they stop and all that kind of stuff. And yet they don't want to contribute to the preservation and the restoration of the reefs. Like they don't put any of that money.
Oh, right.
To the long term, even though it feeds them, because people do that so they could go snorkeling and diving and whatever, right? And on the big moving city, and it's like, without thinking about how do we best preserve everything that's around us to be in symbiosis versus in a parasitic kind of way.
Exactly.
And so that's another of many, many things. So, so then you have these homegrown startup people who get passionate, which is fabulous that people are starting to do this. And the class I took was all about how to do that, how to clean off the reefs, how to clean off the coral, how to, like what kind of algae is good and what is not good and what causes it, and how to do that. And it was really great and enlightening to see people who are so passionate about it. And it's like, good, then let's grasp onto this, and every little bit counts, because the more we do it at a micro level, the more it starts to happen at a macro level.
Well, and given, okay, so if we judge that as right, what about the other side of that? As that cruise industry that just pushes us further and faster.
Yes, it does.
To the ultimate end, maybe the ultimate, like,
maybe we just say we're done with this set of dimensions and we're done with a set of lessons, and it's time to move on.
Right. And the cruise ships can all sink and become reefs.
That's right. And it's funny because they have many times talked about, well, yeah, and that was the whole thing. The 2 years that the cruise ships weren't coming in, guess what? The reefs did a lot of
Bounce back.
restoration. They did a lot of bouncing back, and they are right back to where they started with already. Like, they have disease and all that kind of stuff that's been spread. And yeah, so it's like, and people don't think, well, reefs, oh yeah, that's just a nice to have. And it's like, well, but reefs actually protect islands. They protect the land masses that they're around. It's part of the natural order of how whatever, and then the food chain and all that kind of stuff. But it's like, yeah, like you're saying, the bees. I don't like mosquitoes. They make me uncomfortable. So I'm going to spray a bug spray that's going to kill everything, including all the pollinators.
Right.
Because there's no way to really point out the bees, and so, yes, are we doing this? Okay. Yeah. And you're right. On the other side is, maybe we're purposely just destroying everything in these set of dimensions so that we can just scrap it and move on.
Exactly.
And be finally done with this particular set of lessons. Maybe that's the way we're going to do it. What did we say? We had a deep dive weekend sometime during COVID. I remember this when we were down in at the beach, and the four of us remember we got to that point where we're like, wow, I suddenly just got this feeling of, I just want to throw gasoline on it and throw a match and let it go.
Yeah, just be done. Let's just, end it now.
Yeah. Yeah. So, there's two sides, and there's both sides to that. But the key is, I asked a long time ago when I started doing this work, because a lot of us have had visions for years of things collapsing, or having, and I don't call them cataclysmic events, I call them catalytic events, creating big catalytic events.
Right.
And we can make them as positive or negative as we want to, but if it's a propulsion, then that's what we've created as a collective propulsion, right? Without judgment. And I asked a long time ago, because we have alarmists, and we have people who are building storm bunkers and all that kind of stuff, and I'm like, I asked my guidance, so what is there to do? What is there for me to do? Right? Do I have to prepare? Do I need to have a certain number of dollars in the bank? Do I need to have a backpack ready? And basically the answer I got very clearly was, you will have, if you trust and you stay present, you will have everything you need in every moment that you need it. And the more and the thing is, we cloud our minds with the ego, getting out of the moment, going back to what we started with, that whole presence thing. We cloud our minds with panic, or fear, and anger, or frustration, and like all that clouds our presence, because we then can't see the whole picture. What we have been talking about for several years now is slowing down and not just speeding through the neighborhood, walking through, sitting down on the bench and taking a breath and looking around and being present with it, without judging it, without
envying it.
And envying it, or without fearing it, or being frustrated by it, or whatever, or just looking right past it to, oh, well, I'm just getting here, right? And that was the whole thing with the travels. I just want to go home, right? But then it's like, but what if home is just wherever you are?
Right. Imagine what that freedom would give you.
Right. And what is that real feeling is, I just want to be where I'm in my comfort zone. And what if our comfort zone was always in this moment?
Right. Always traveled with you, was whatever's right around you.
Yeah.
I mean, that to me just feels incredible.
Yes. Yeah. And it's a big turtle. It's a turtle lesson. Like, people, like, we talk about like what animal energy brings, but like turtles bring that because they have their home on their backs.
Right.
Carry it with them. Yep. So yeah, and that's been a big thing that's been in my face. And when you do that, and it's very uncomfortable, right? So there's a person that I I highly respect and who makes me crazy because they are so completely in the moment that nothing is ever planned, right?
Right, right,
And yet they've been an instructor of mine in my scuba diving or whatever, and so like I would find myself getting irritated, but everything works out. And it's a matter of, well, yeah, you knew what to do. You know what to do. You learned your
right.
stuff, like to me, right? You know your stuff. You know what to do. It worked out fine. And it's like, you're right, but I'm still gonna be pissed about it. And in the way, it's the way I teach, which is funny how like that sort of comes back to me is, I'll see, but that's what this is the tough love that we're giving ourselves. We're giving
Right.
ourselves an incredible amount of tough love to say, you've got this. I've
Right.
got this.
And don't get confused with the self-harm and the judgment about your actions and your reactions and everything. That's where that level of compassion comes in that says, I know this is not what you thought it would be. I know this is not as easy as you thought it would be, but it is okay.
Well,
And you've got this.
and it's
You
only
know what to do.
it's only easy or hard based on how we judge it.
Exactly. Exactly. Everything is always perfect. And if you start from that basic understanding, it's all what you think about it that creates that comfort or discomfort,
Right. Right.
which in my mind is the ego.
Well, it is. Any kind of any discomfort is the ego, because the ego is, wants that
I
comfort.
expected this
Right.
and I got this.
And we get that all the time when we feel uncomfortable or irritated or frustrated and whatever, and it's like, okay, so if you get your head out of your butt, this is what I say to myself. If you get your head out of your butt and say, well, what is this here to show me? Right. And all the answer you get is stay present and stay fluid.
Or another way is, look, when you get tired of that view, I'll be here
Yeah.
to show you something different.
Right. 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 So, I always say things like when people are late, and like I used to get a lot of years ago when I was in corporate, I would get really irritated about people not being on time and all that kind of stuff. And then I became the opposite. And then I would judge myself. And then it was like, at some point it sort of like balanced out, because it's like, well, everything is perfect, right? So we have this big cultural thing about being on time. And some people are like, I don't respect you if you're not on time. And it's like, I am on time. We're all on time. We're all on time exactly when we need to be someplace, we're there, right? And it's doing our best to manage our calendar so that we fall in together as we have planned, right?
Right. Right.
But it might not necessarily be within a 5-minute span. And so, like what I say, I'll tell people is, okay, don't get yourself stressed about being late for something, right? Do your best to keep your calendar or whatever. But if you get tied up someplace, you never know that it's preventing you from having to go through some other grief in some other place. Like maybe you're missing an accident. Maybe,
right. Maybe you get stuck in a traffic jam because of an accident, and you're instead of 5 minutes, 10 minutes late, you're 2 hours late.
Right.
And maybe, that is that trust.
Right. And maybe the other person that you're meeting or the other people that you're meeting with, they got tied up with something else that you don't even know about, and they end up showing up at the same time you do anyway. Right. So nobody's late. They're all on time. They're all right. So, it's, or maybe, like there's so many maybes. And the thing is, we set this up in such complexity and such a multidimensional, such multifaceted, beautiful thing that we separated these facets of ourselves so that we didn't have to see the whole thing at every given moment. But that's part of the fun, like it's funny. Like I was pondering about something last week, and it was basically, well, you purposely don't remember this.
Right.
Purposely don't remember this. Because what happens is doing this work, then it's like, well, how come I don't remember this? Because I know how to access anything, right? I know I can access anything. And it's the answer I give myself is you purposely don't, because if you did, you would change what you ultimately wanted to create.
Right.
And
Right.
it's that whole, people that we talk about in movies, like go time travel, right? Like, do you really want to know that? Because then you might not have done this. Like,
Well, it's the temporal prime directive in Star Trek.
right, exactly. Exactly. So what does that bring us to in terms of like a clearing for this week? I mean, we've done so many things about presence, but maybe it's being able to
It's connecting in that the judgment with the presence. I think that's the more the bend we're taking today, talking about how it affects our ability to achieve the presence. As if we could, first, I always say, see it, recognize where the judgment is impeding your ability to just be present. And then allow that to expand into everything. You're everything.
Yeah. Start with the central part. And part of it is truly, and I know we've said this so many times, but it's truly letting go of the idea of a comfort zone or finding your comfort zone in complete fluidity.
Right. Right.
Like, I've had a series of dreams. This is a little side thing, but this is related. I meant to say it before and we got off on a tangent, but I've had a series of dreams over the past week and a half since I went away. And it's very interesting to be conscious of these dreams where I'm managing multiple parallel timelines at the same time, right? In the dream, and I'm completely aware of it. And I'm having two things simultaneously happening in the same situation, different timelines. And they're slightly different. And then I figure out in the middle of the dream how to manage this thing over here by what's over here. And there was a TV show a while back on NBC for like one season that was awesome. And I think it was called Awake, where a guy had a car accident and he was living in two parallel timelines at the same time. And he was a detective and he started to utilize one timeline against the other to be able to solve crimes and stuff. And I'm like, so this is what my dreams have started to be like. And I'm very conscious of it in the dreams. And it's like, well, this is maybe what we're going to start doing, but we can't do that until we get really present with, this is not wrong. This is not bad. This is only like what there is in front of me. And how do I manage this? Because everything is not linear.
Right. Right.
And we can let go of our expectations in that comfort zone when we accept that, right? To say, this is not linear.
Right.
It's all whatever. It's all at the same time. It's all. Right. So all of this management is getting to that presence and doing it without judgment, because that's what clears the water. That's what helps everything, all the muck clear. So then you could see a better picture. And that's what happened in the dreams. That's what's happened every time, was until I remember from one timeline to the other that I'm walking both paths at the same time, that it's not a linear thing, right? Then I'm a little panicked because I'm like confused in the dreams, like what's going on? This just like, wait, is this happening or is this not happening? And then all of a sudden I realize what I'm doing and I'm like, oh, and I can use this because now I'm not afraid of it. Now it's not uncomfortable. Now it's like, oh, now this is a game. Now how do I do this? So if we did that with everything, because I feel like we've pierced so many veils. We have taken away so many veils. And I think that also adds to our confusion and complexity because we are aware of so much more than we were before. Right. And so now it's like a different level of presence altogether.
Right. And if we use it to create and reinforce our comfort zone of where we are in that presence.
Right. So finding our comfort zone in every moment. Maybe that's it. Allowing our comfort zone in every moment.
I like that. I like that a lot. I think that would be really helpful.
Yeah, because that takes away any kind of foundational need of a constancy. No constancies anymore. Comfort in every moment of every fluid thing, and allowing that, because that's what's going to allow us the complete fluidity to really manage things in the most amazing, easy flowing kind of way.
Right.
Yeah. All right, let's go do that. All right, everybody, get comfortable. Take a deep breath. Close your eyes. As we step out of separation, back into wholeness and oneness. And we set ourselves at the vibration where that is our truth. That is from where we exist, create, and experience. All right. Well, there was a lot of chatter in there in the beginning. A lot of collective chatter. But felt nice in the end.
Right.
It started to more like in the beginning, it sort of felt like these static like waves because there was all the but, and then it was like these other like sort of waves, and then it started to smooth out toward the end. It's like, because then you stop thinking about the other stuff and you're just there, and that's where the comfort zone in every moment comes, and that was very nice.
Oh, yeah. Yep. That was so peaceful.
Very
Yes.
nice.
And I saw it, you let go of all the attachments when you become comfortable in every moment, all the things that you think make you comfortable. Whether it's, oh, I have to have this home, or I have to, have this, or I have to eat this, or I have to do this. And it's like, those just limit you.
Mhm.
And as you just become comfortable in every moment, it's so freeing.
Well, and that's complete non-attachment, really. That's the benevolent attachment that we talk about to like almost the full degree. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And I laugh because I've put myself, I have had so many things that have forced me into that this spring. And it's just constantly like, okay, well, you ready to just accept this? Or are you going to have your moment of panic? And, but it gets shorter every time. Every time
Right.
it gets shorter. So it just takes practice. We're out of practice. Let yourself allow it. That's the whole
Mhm.
message, and don't judge yourself for when you don't. Like,
Right.
see it for
Right.
what it is, and then embrace it and love yourself and say, I get it. And now what does it look like if I do this without this? Right.
Right.
So yeah, that's a big paradigm shift right there. If we start to look at things differently instead of with all that friction and judgment in every moment. I mean, it's really getting down to these nitty-gritty things that are going to make a huge difference, not just individual, but collective levels. So,
Right.
all right. Well, play with that this week.
Yeah. Practice that this week. Tell us what you think. Tell us what you see when you go out there and connect into that comfort zone and that level of presence.
And yeah, we want to hear what happens and like your experiences and how you've dealt with it differently, and, staying conscious of it and observant. And if this is helpful, absolutely, please share with others. Share this podcast, share the live stream, share the site so that others can also benefit from what we offer.
Right. Follow us, subscribe.
Yeah.
Like, love, all those things.
All that stuff, we're out there. All right. We'll see you next time. This is Angela Coulter and
Sarah Sieg Avignoni
signing off with this week's Living Ascension. Have a good one.